YouTube. If you are interested in bodybuilding, if you evolve in the lifting community or sphere, those terms, flow and frame, you should have heard before. So what do they mean? When people talk about frame, what they mean is the skeletal system that supports the muscles. And in a sense, it is a very important component of genetics, because the bigger your frame, the more muscle you can pack onto it. Someone who is 6'6" is going to have a much higher potential for muscle mass than someone who is 5'8". It doesn't mean that the person who's 6'6" is going to look better, but they can be potentially bigger. Frame is going to be important when it comes to building a body that you like, because you will have to keep in mind your genetic limitations. I will be making a video about that, and it should go live the same day as this one, but I personally have a very short frame. When I mean I have a short frame, it means I have small clavicles that are very short, which means I have narrow shoulders. As a whole, it means that I lack width. My back and my shoulders are not wide. So I have to work around that, because it is a disadvantage in bodybuilding. It comes with certain advantages. One being because my muscles are stacked on a much shorter and smaller area, they pop more, so they look more 3D, they look bigger. So I'm more bulky, I have a bulkier aspect, but I don't have that width. It's important to be objective and realistic with what you were given and your genetics to make the best of them. Same for people who have large shoulders. It might be a potential weak point in other areas because you're going to have a tough time packing on size. So that was what frame is. Your frame also takes into consideration things like your waist size, the width of your hips, the size of your wrists, the size of your elbows and of your knees and ankles. Why do we talk about that in bodybuilding? What is the point? Well, I told you that someone who's 6'6" has more potential of being big than someone who's 5'8". But the person who's 5'8" can be smaller, weight less, and have smaller measurements, but still look bigger. How? Illusions. Basically, the smaller your joints, the more your muscle bellies that are surrounding the joint will look huge. For example, the size of your forearm is basically balanced by the size of your wrists. So even if you have 15 inches forearms, if you have very big wrists, they're not going to look as big because the area surrounding it, or rather the joint that is closer to it, is roughly the same size. So it doesn't show much of a difference. And what matters in bodybuilding is the sweep, the curvature of the muscle belly. Same thing for your elbows. If you have very thick, very big elbows and you do this, even if you have a big peak, if the elbow here is very thick, your peak is not as pronounced, so it's not as impressive. The same goes for people who have massive quads with massive knees. Instead of being something that sweeps in the knee, it just is straight down, so it doesn't look as good. Same thing for your ankle. Having a very large ankle and very big calves is not going to look as good as having small ankles. So in the world of bodybuilding, all of these differences between skeletons are going to play a huge role, and usually when people talk about genetics, that's one aspect they always refer to. Because it's a bodybuilding channel, that's what I care about, but keep in mind that usually having a bigger structure, having wider hips, wider ankles, bigger knees, bigger wrists, make you stronger. It gives you more potential for strength, and in a sense, most strength athletes have that wide structure. If you look at any strongman competitor, they usually don't have narrow hips. They have very large hips and very big legs so that they have a solid platform to move weights. So that is frame. That's what frame is. Your frame also takes into consideration your height and the length of your limbs that also play a role in the way your muscle looks. But I will be making specific videos about each because they're all very interesting in their own right. Now, what about flow? Well, flow is the way your frame as a whole look. Does it look good? Does it look bad? It doesn't matter. But usually when someone has flow, it means they're aesthetic. An aesthetic physique is a physique that has a good flow. What defines flow? Objectively, there is no definition of flow. Flow can differ from one person to the other. But usually there are certain types of physique that are usually can be widely accepted as having flow, and these are aesthetic physiques. So usually physiques with a trimmer waist, with wide shoulder, a good V taper. The reason why is because, in my opinion, what makes or breaks the flow of a physique is the core. Not just the waist, but the abdominals, the obliques, the way the core basically connects the trunk and the legs. This is the reason why there is such a discussion around core and around bubble guts in the bodybuilding sphere right now, and why it's starting to change very fast. People were complaining that bodybuilders looked bloated, and in a way it was killing the aesthetic factor of bodybuilding because it really didn't look that good. You can be as big as you want, and I make videos about that. No one cares if you have massive arms and a gut. It doesn't look good. You need to have a core that ties everything together. It needs to be tight. So that's one aspect of flow, but flow also works regarding limbs. For example, if you have massive quads and smaller calves, it's going to kill the flow of your legs. If you have massive biceps and small forearms, it's going to kill the flow of your arm. So in a sense, flow could also be defined as having balance, but you can have imbalances in your physique without it affecting your flow too much. For example, you rarely hear people complaining that bodybuilders don't have enough neck gains or trap gains because these areas are surrounding the physique, they don't connect anything together. So they can be lacking without affecting the flow of the physique too much. But a perfect physique will have body parts that are not necessarily the same measurements or perfectly equal in development, but will connect together in a way that is aesthetically pleasing, where everything just flows. It just flows. It's flow, as I said, is very subjective. Some people like certain physiques, some people don't. But when you see someone who has flow, it's quite evident. It's sometimes tough to explain why, because there is so many things that come into consideration. Limb length and everything, the size of the body and everything. But in my opinion, as a bodybuilder, you should strive towards having the best flow possible. And that's going to basically only happen if you can regard your frame in an objective manner and work towards making sure that your measurements and your entire body is developed around making that frame look as big as possible and as great as possible. In a sense, your job is to pack your skeleton with enough muscle in the right places so that the full package is a finished, a perfect work of art. That's for me what I aspire when I do bodybuilding. It's to create something I will be proud of, that can also be exposed to the world and be regarded with a certain level of admiration for the finished craft. So this was a video about what the terms frame and flow mean in bodybuilding. Let me know about what you think in the comments. Tell me about your frame, tell me about your limitations, about what you do to work around them. And tell me what type of flow you think is the best when it comes to bodybuilding. Thank you for watching. Have a good day.